healthcare rights and human rights mainly on freedom of speech and freedom of expression, like how we are supposed to be allowed to protest in Singapore, but you don't hear it because it's illegal to protest in Singapore. And you can be charged for protesting even if you protest at what the government claims to be a venue whereby people can legally protest in Singapore. Yeah.
I never knew that. Wow.
Yeah, so in Singapore, we have something like the Hyde Park. So it is called Hong Lim Park. It is like the protest corner whereby people are supposed to go there to express themselves and to raise issues that they are disagreeing with about government policies. And the government claims that you can be safe there. But in fact, you can actually be charged for protesting in Singapore.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's why you don't
And
hear
when did you...
protests.
Oh, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, that's why you don't hear protests in Singapore, because the government can charge you for it.
Yeah, that's awful. How ridiculous. When did you come to York?
That was in 2018. Yes.
Oh, that's a while ago.
Yes.
Did you enjoy it?
I think it gave me something whereby I can really compare on my first-hand experiences compared to in Singapore. Because in Singapore, we have this government propaganda because we talk about healthcare in Singapore. And the government propaganda is such that Singapore has the best healthcare in the whole world. And that in Singapore, our healthcare system is so good that everybody wants to learn from it. And the worst healthcare system in Singapore, one of the worst is the UK NHS system. So the Singapore's government theory is that, people are always protesting about it. It's because they want to abolish it. And it is because it is so bad, it's high taxes. But that is not actually the case in Singapore and UK if you were to really go and experience the two healthcare systems. One of the examples they like to give is that there's high taxes in UK compared to in Singapore. But in Singapore, we actually have to pay more than 10% of our salary towards healthcare system. And on top of that, when we have to go to a hospital, polyclinic, or whatever health checkup, we have to pay cash by ourselves. It's not covered in this compared to NHS system. And they also, in Singapore, the government like to give this image that in UK NHS system, there is a long wait time. But the long wait time is provided you are going there because you have a fever. You refuse to buy the paracetamol by yourself. You want to get free paracetamol. So you have long wait time. But in Singapore, you have long wait time even if you are going to pay money for it. So this is not comparing apple with apple. In UK, you are getting free things, so you are paying for it. Even if you have to pay it, the paracetamol is at a subsidized rate compared to in Singapore. So in Singapore, it can cost about £10. And per consultation, it's about £20. And the government increased all this consultation fee without actually telling Singaporeans. So you won't actually be able to find out, okay, Singapore government is going to increase our healthcare bill, increase our consultation bill. You won't be able to find it in the news in Singapore. The government actually covered it up. But if you were to find the actual bill, of people who go through the government system, you'll realize, the bill actually doubled from like post-COVID till now, something like that. So before COVID, it was about $10 and now it's about $20.
Oh, wow.
And this is a subsidized rate. So if you were to go the private route, you were to go and find a private doctor, you want the treatment to be on the same day, then that will probably be like $50 to $100.
It sounds like you've got a big uphill battle when you're battling not against something that's like difficult, but something that has such a strong perception of like positivity around it.
Yes. Because you don't have transparency and accountability.
Oh God. Wow. Okay, fab. Do you mind if we sort of jump back into the questions before we cut out, and hopefully, fingers and toes crossed, it won't cut out again.
Yes.
Pray to the Lebanese satellites going around. Okay. So I guess in the work that you do you think you've sort of found moments of joy, or you felt joy?
I think when you see that you can change government policies, whether it's for the better or for the worse, you know that you are making an impact. And you know that it's going to affect the future generation, that people are raising awareness, they are debating about it, then that is something to talk about. Because in Singapore, in our parliament, people don't actually debate much in the parliament. So parliamentarians are supposed to be elected into parliaments to debate about government policies. But in Singapore, because we have been ruled by the same political party since before independence, they have brainwashed the people to think that, oh, the government is just someone who manage your town council, who manage your estate cleanliness. So by having to raise the awareness and finally let people talk about it after like 6 decades, I think this is something that we can find joy about, that at least people are now talking about it, rather than being male and being people who are like doves, sitting there and not doing anything, thinking that, oh, the government always say this, so it must be right. But that's not true. That's not how the outside world is. And like what people would say, Singapore has one of the most powerful passports in the world, but Singaporeans do not actually travel out of the country. You don't see Singaporeans being rich enough to travel out of the country. It is very rare. And you don't hear news about other countries and Singapore because of how high our press freedom censorship is. So we are one of the country with literally like no press freedom in Singapore.
And when you say you feel it feels good when people are like talking about it, is it more than of, can you like, do you pin joy to like a specific action of like a specific, I've changed this or we've changed this government policy, or do you pin it more to the hope of like we could change this policy?
I think we literally saw policy change. So one example is that there was a policy that we actually spoke about that was called Singapore CPF retirement sum. It is now called the retirement sum, but previously it was called the minimum sum. So what we say was that, okay, this minimum sum is not realistic. Singaporeans are unable to hit it, and we need to change this policy for the better. The government actually retaliated by entirely removing this minimum sum scheme and call it the retirement sum scheme. So when people search about our reports, about our article, about our criticism against it, it's against CPF minimum sum. So now people are searching CPF retirement sum. They won't be able to find anything about us. This is how they work in Singapore. We literally saw the case change. There are things like, for example, there was a statutory board called the Council for Private Education. And we talk about how in Singapore, there are a lot of degree mills, even until today. So this degree mill literally print out degree certificates to people, and we criticize it. So they threaten with a defamation suit, and this statutory board under the Ministry of Education Singapore just shut down completely now. It doesn't exist anymore today. So we don't peg it to something. We literally can see the impact that we are making and how the government just silenced everything. So for the most current case now is that we are talking about child abuse cases in Singapore, because there is an increasing number of children being abused in Singapore preschool. Because Singapore is a very small country and we only have about 30,000 babies being born every year. And about 147 children were abused in Singapore preschool in the MOE approved preschool. So this is under Ministry of Education. And this is an increase from 137 the year before, which is a more than 7% increase in child abuse in Singapore preschool. So now we are raising this issue to the Ministry of Education, and we are waiting to see what the Ministry of Education, what the Singapore Police Force will react to it.
Okay. And after the moment where the bot was shut down, what did you have like a feeling of elation, and did that last? And could you see if that brought sort of any new energy or any new insight at that like the positive moment that came when it was finally shut down?
Okay, I think the first thing is that it forces the media to actually report on it, because we have no press freedom in Singapore. We can't get anything out into the news. The news will never report on us. So by having this issue being raised, it means that, okay, we managed to get this topic out, because the main issue is we want to raise this topic. By people not even knowing that this topic exists, we cannot debate on it. And after people has known about it, so it is up to the people to debate what do they want. And of course, when the government start to clamp down, start to arrest people, that is when everybody back down, they get scared. But you have to understand is that every single moment that you are going through, you have to know that what are you going to leave behind 100 years from now on. Because 100 years later, you can be working very hard for all your money, all your house and your cars. But 100 years later, the person who is going to live in your house and use your car is not going to be someone you even met, you even ever meet in your whole life. So what are you going to leave behind? Then what I think is that I want to let them know that you can fight for change, and change will happen. Whether it's for the good or for the better, it's up to the people to decide. But you know, years down the road, you are doing something that is right, then there's nothing for you to be afraid of. And at least you are standing on the right side of justice.
Carry on.
In history.
And the people that you're fighting for, what sort of emotions do you see in them when you do these kind of things that are making progress?
I think for my situation is that Singapore has been ruled by the same political party since before independence, which is like 6 decades or more. So people generally believe what the mainstream media, what the propaganda is saying. So they will generally just hate on us. Like, okay, why are you suddenly telling me something that I have believed my entire life to be correct, to suddenly be wrong? So they cannot accept that they are wrong. Yeah, this is one thing that the general population is. And another thing is that in Singapore, females don't speak up at all. You can never hear about, oh, there's another female talking about housing issue, about healthcare, about how we are supposed to lead a life, set up a family, all this. We have been brainwashed that as girls, you are supposed to grow up, work, get your degree, earn your money. And if you look at like the first prime minister daughter, so she just studied all her way up. You don't need to get married or have anything. You just need to be capable and contribute to the economy. Because in Singapore, our GDP is the best, and we need to be the best for our money. Everything is guided by money, nothing else. There's nothing like, oh, you can have joy, you can have happiness, you can seek whatever you want, your passion. There's no such thing in Singapore.
Oh, okay. That sounds depressing, if I'm honest. How did you get to where you are then? Like, or get beyond that mindset of you just need to have money, you just need to work, looking for something else?
So in Singapore, we have something called the 5C. If you Google like Singapore 5C, it's basically condo. You need to live in a good house. You need to have car, the second C. You need to have cash. You need to have a lot of money. You need to have like your country clubs. Yeah. You need to have your cash, car, condo, country clubs, and can't remember the fourth C, but basically just all the materialistic things. Yeah. Then for me, my dream was like, I want to be a mother. And that was something everybody said, you are not supposed to be a mother. Then I was like, why? Oh, because you score A1 for your maths, you score A1 for your science, so you are supposed to study and become an engineer. Then I was like, no, I just want to be a mother. So what if I score A1? I want to teach my children. Why can't I be a stay-at-home mom and have whatever knowledge I have to the next generation? Who knows? Maybe my child will be the one. And if I have a few children, I teach my children. Isn't that better? Rather than me alone, I can have a few more to groom the next generation. So I realized that this is not supposed to be a mindset that a Singaporean girl is supposed to have. A Singaporean girl is supposed to just believe in helping and boosting the GDP. A Singaporean girl is also supposed to do all kinds of things just to help the government economy, which to me, I didn't feel that it was right. It's like, I think that feminism is something that allows female to choose whether you want to stay at home, you want to work, you want to be educated, you want to be a firefighter, or you just want to be a musician. There is no one straight path that, okay, we are going to have feminism, so everybody must work. That's called a slavery. That's not called feminism.
Yeah, that's not progress.
Yeah, that's not what we work so hard for. We are supposed to improve so that our next generation becomes better.
Are you sort of surrounded by other women who think like you and have come to the same like epiphany as you have?
Okay, so I think I'm very blessed that I was there in 2018 during my pregnancy, because like over there I learned that a woman can give birth by themselves. But in Singapore, I was told that a woman should go through cesarean because it fits into the doctor's schedule. And right after giving birth, you have only 2 months to rest. after 2 months, you send your children to infant care. So in Singapore, we have this infant care whereby people send their babies in at 2 months. Then you are supposed to work and boost the GDP. And your children will go through the same cycle. So that made me reflect a lot. And when I look overseas at other countries, I realized that you can have the opportunity to choose what you want. And there are all kinds of works in this world. But in Singapore, like, we don't have a degree in human rights. We don't have that in Singapore. We don't have a degree in international law so that we can help human rights. We don't have that. The word human rights is basically censored, like some kind of vulgarities in Singapore. So we don't have all these things. Yes.
Oh my God.
So when I was first introduced, when overseas media first contacted me and they say that, oh, you know, you're a human rights defender. I was like, what's human right? I'm not defending human right. What's human right? I'm just here to say that I want to buy a house. I'm just talking about housing right. I never heard of human rights. I'm here because I saw elderly dying and they are like choosing to die because they can't pay the hospital bill. They can't pay their healthcare bills. So I'm concerned about this elderly and I'm concerned about the healthcare. So why is healthcare a human right? Because that was when I realized that in Singapore, we have never been taught that we are humans. We are basically just statistics and digits to boost the government's GDP.
And since you're finding like human rights, I know because in York you must have gone to some of the classes and like learned about all the international system. What's your opinion on human rights?
I think we are all humans and we need to know that. But I have realized that a lot of humans do not know that they are humans. I realized that a lot of humans think that, oh, I am just a machine to fight war. Because in Singapore, we still have compulsory conscription. And in Singapore, guys have to serve 2 years of compulsory conscription. It is one of the tactics, very slimy, that the government has used to boost the employment rate so that the unemployment rate will go down. And every time I talk about conscription, people will say, oh, but you don't serve NS. Then after that, they will say that, oh, you know, in Singapore, girls should serve NS because guys are serving NS. This shouldn't be the ideology that guys are bringing to the table. If guys do not like NS or do not like to serve national service, they should go and abolish conscription, just like how other first world countries, their guys are doing it. But Singapore guys, they don't do that. So maybe this is also why one of the reasons why marriage rate of Singapore guys is at a low of just 40%.
Yeah, it seems like they want to bring everyone else down instead of trying to lift everyone else up.
Yes. We should be living our life to be better. But in Singapore, they are just like, okay, we are going to shoot everyone down so that everybody will just be low and we will just all die together. But that isn't how a society should be. We should be improving ourselves and make our lives become better. If we do not like a certain policy, we should abolish it. Which is also why I realized that when all these topics are being raised in Singapore, what a lot of people do is that they go on to personal attack. So for people who cannot handle that well, then they will say that, oh, you know, I'm not feeling good about it. I'm feeling very sad. Maybe I should just give up. But if you think of it positively, when you raise an issue about government policy and the only thing they are left with is to attack you personally, privately, or simply based on your looks and gender, then they have lost the debate on the policies. They know that the government policy is wrong. They just refuse to admit the fact and they are unable to debate on the fact that the government policy is simply just bad and a failure.
It sounds like a grim picture in some ways, but do you find within like people around you, do you see moments of joy? And even if sometimes it's not like where you'd expect to see moments of joy, like I guess joy doesn't have to be moral. So if someone's feeling happy, it's not necessarily because they're doing the right thing. It can also be because, I don't know, if people like, if they find joy in going on a personal attack rather than wanting change.
I think in Singapore, our government literally hire people to spam negative comments online. It's literally a job. Yeah, and they get paid. So I feel like maybe they are happy because one thing is that they literally get money out of it. And another thing, it fits their family. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, the police arrest us. The police probably have to find some joy in arresting us. But of course, some of the police, like, they will say that, okay, you know, I somehow got to talk to you, and then I need to interrogate you. So there are some police who will just simply give us whatever question they need to interrogate us with, and then ask us to just fill out the blanks. So these are also the police we know, okay, they are not interested in all this, but somehow they are just being scheduled to have this duty roster to come and talk to us. Yeah, you can see that these are the police officers with the morals. But those who pick up our case, generally, they have promotion right after that. We can see it very clearly. Yeah. I think it is up to their moral and their conscience to think like, okay, did you enter the police force so that you can help to reduce crime in Singapore? Because there are a lot of crimes in Singapore. We are one of the highest for scamming, online scamming. We are also one of the highest whereby children are vaping as well. There's a lot of child abuse cases, like mentioned just now, on children that are below 7. There are a lot of like sexual violation, sexual assault cases in Singapore as well. So police can go and investigate these kind of cases, but instead resources are being used against us. So is this what you come to work as a police for? If that is actually your case, like you want Singapore to turn into the next North Korea, then okay, great. You will probably be happy having this job. But if your job is saying that I want Singapore to become the first world country, a true first world country where people have a better standard of living, when people can afford their healthcare, their housing, and retire in Singapore, then yeah, they will just say that, okay, this is not the kind of job that I want. Then these are the police that won't find joy, probably. Yeah.
Oh, what was that, sorry?
These are probably the police that won't find joy in what they are doing if political persecution is what they have to do. Yeah, they are probably the police who will find joy really, solving a rape case, arresting a murderer, getting the people who got scammed their monies back.
And have you seen joy in like anything that's not linked to materialism, or do you feel joy that's like not linked to materialism? Because it seems like it's linked to doing it, just achieving something, right? In the police's mind, but people have joy that's not linked to that.
I think now people have come to, the people who are around me, they have come to learn that, okay, joy can be just having government changes, a small change at a time. Yeah, they have learned that, okay, we cannot just change everything like immediately. They have learned that, okay, we can change small policies at a time, and we can also leave a historical record behind. Like, for example, we can publish a book so that in the future, people want to research about Singapore. They know, okay, there is actually this book that's in the University of York about human rights abuses in Singapore. I can go to the London Library to read about how expensive Singapore healthcare is, how a mother got to struggle about how much bills they have to pay just to get pregnant and give birth in Singapore.
And do you think people, or actually, do you think yourself, you've had like space to reflect on the emotions that you felt during your work, whether that is like happiness or sadness or joy?
I think you feel emotion almost immediately. Like if someone comes to you and they say, okay, you're doing a bad thing, then you start to reflect, you start to have a calm emotion, grounded emotion. If someone comes to you and they start to shout at you, then you start to think, okay, you have a puzzle emotion, like, oh, so this is actually how bad the situation is. This is actually how deep the brainwashing and propaganda has been ingrained in Singaporeans. Then you start to know how bad the situation is, and you start to accept that, okay, we will just take small step at a time. And that is when you say, okay, I'm going to make this small step today. Today, I'm going to maybe contribute to change maybe 100 people. We are going to discuss this policy and these changes with 100 people. Is it going to work? And when this whole task is being completed, you are sure that this 100 people understand what we are talking about, then yeah, you got some kind of joy. Because you want people to understand you. You also don't want people to just blindly follow you, saying that, okay, I really like your content, but what exactly is your content? They do not know anything at all. You want someone who supports you, and if let's say there's a third party coming to question, what is she advocating for? What housing policy? You want your supporters to be able to answer that.
So it seems like, so someone comes to you and they're emotional, you can feel the emotions, and then you do your task, and then at the end when the task is completed, there's also that emotional, big emotions. What about in the middle, like when you're actually doing the task, do you think, you're just focusing on the quality of the task and getting that done, or do you hang on to either the emotions that you've just seen or the emotions that you will see once it's done?
I think for my case, I'm more focused on the task because I know that I have a future generation that I need to fight for. But I also do know the question and the direction you're going is that there are some people who may have let their emotions override them, and that is where they will lose their path and the angle. Because if, let's say, today I want to talk about this housing issue with 100 people, I want them to know that the government has came up with a certain housing scheme, and this housing scheme is bad, it is worse than before. Then I need to make sure this 100 people can be the people that in the future will defend me when if I were to say that this government housing policy is bad. And when the government is to say that, no, this is good, there will be 100 people here to say that this is bad and why it is bad, how to make it better. But if you are out there thinking that, okay, today I have gathered 100 people and I'm going to make them praise me, and then you are going to feed your own ego, you are going to have your pride overblown, and you will not be focused on changing the government policy. You will just be there, and then the 100 people may not even know what you are talking about, because the topic will be on yourself and not on the housing policies. So you shouldn't let your emotion be in there. By right, you shouldn't let your emotion be there. But again, everybody is human, so this kind of thing do happen.
Do you mind? Do you sort of? Can you elaborate on that? Like, everyone's human. This kind of things happen. Like,
because I
how
saw
do you
it
see
many times. I saw a lot of people who come and then they claim that they are speaking up. But after speaking up, they became people whom there are some of them who may even get bribed by the government. There are some of them who get bribed by their own ego, and they just left the thing out to do something else that will continue to feed their ego. So they lose focus of what they are supposed to do, which was what initially they were saying, that they are going to change the housing policy, they are going to reduce our healthcare bill, our consultation bill, they want to make it affordable. So your focus should be on raising the issue that government is increasing consultation bill, causing healthcare bills to be high without informing Singaporeans. That should be the focus. But people lose focus of that.
Okay. Interesting. So it sounds like a lot of the emotions that you feel, it comes from other people. Do you find you're able to create joy yourself, like, rather than seeing what it can do to other people? Do you, like, if you do an action well, that maybe, like, if you, like, I'm trying to think, if in the midst of the task of presenting to 100 people, you plan the day really well, which mainly affects you, not them, do you get as much joy out of that, or is it mainly just concerning other people that you feel the joy? If I phrase that okay.
I think for my case is that I have learned to separate myself from the people. Yeah. I have learned that, okay, I am just one individual, and by doing a certain thing, I will achieve a certain goal. So I do not let other people's feeling affect me. So there are people who will come to me, they can be full of positivity. They can be like, oh, but you know, you have achieved so much compared to typical people. You have published a book, you have written so much, and it is literally a record down there. You don't need to do more. So I can't let that get into my head, and I will just stop here. There are also people who will come to me and say, oh, you have published a book, but so what? It is not making much of a significance. But then I will let it get in, because that is constructive. So I will say, okay, great. Then I will publish a second book. If publishing a book is not enough, I will publish articles. I will send my articles out there to let people talk about it, to let people discuss about it. Because for my case is that I just want the government policies to change for the better. And I want a better future for my future generation. So to me, it doesn't matter who is the person doing or publishing the thing, as long as the message get out. And especially in Singapore's case is that there is literally nobody who is speaking up. So I just want to encourage as many people to speak up, to debate, to raise awareness as possible.
Do you mind me asking, what was your book about? And what sort of inspired you to write it?
I think, okay, for me, at that point in time, so first of all, I didn't know that in Singapore, there is actually no female doing all this kind of thing. So one example was that when I stood for election, I was the first female independent candidate. So I didn't know that females were not supposed to talk about this. I didn't know that females are always supposed to be listening to some other guys. to sign away all their rights, to sign away all their speeches and give every information to be vet by a guy, or to simply regurgitate and say what other guys have mentioned, which is what the Singapore female politicians have been doing. So I didn't know about that. Then after I have done it, then that was when I got disqualified from standing for election. Then that was when I realized, oh, a female needs to leave a record behind. Because when I try to search for anything, I can't find anything. There is literally nothing. Then I realized, okay, if I want to have a future generation, I want future generation to be able to read about something. 100 years later, somebody will be able to search or find out about something. Then at least I'm leaving the information behind for them to read on. So this is something that I have realized, that there is no record in Singapore. It's so hard to find anything that is about Singapore. Yeah. And this is something that you have to say that the government is doing a good job in brainwashing the population. Because if had there be any transparency or accountability, all this information we released to public, there would have been a lot of people, even older than me, earlier than me, they would have talked about it, wrote about it, and protested against it, about how ridiculous policies can be. But because there is literally no one, and I'm the first person, then I realized, okay, I need to do something since I'm now in the position to do it. I can't be living in New York for like more than half a year and not doing anything.
I really admire how much you leave, like how much you want to leave, like material differences, like make this book, make this policy change, give this speech. It's really impressive. I guess I'll just like outright ask, like, what do you think could be the place of joy in human rights and in work?
Because it's human rights, you're helping humans. And as long as you're helping a single person out there, giving them hope, that should bring joy to you, if that is really what you wanted to do. But if your joy is to think about, okay, I want to have 100 followers, I want to have 1,000 likes, then maybe this will not bring joy to you. Because sometimes it can be as easy as saving a single life of a child on the street as well. Especially nowadays in Singapore, there are a lot of cases whereby children are taken care, because in Singapore, our dual income families, whereby both husband and wife work, has increased over the years. And the latest statistic, I think it was about half a decade ago in 2020, more than 50%, I think almost 55% of parents actually have to work in Singapore, both parents. So children are actually left to the maids or the grandparents, and it causes a lot of accidents in Singapore. So they literally just die away. If we could have saved one of this child's life, who knows, he or she may be the next prime minister or president of Singapore. This little child can be better than me, can be better than everybody that's in Singapore. Maybe he or she will also be the first person who brings Singapore to the World Cup. Because the government promised to bring Singapore to the World Cup, and until now, they have never done it.
I like that view of, I think it's quite a simplistic one of just bringing joy to people, but it's something that's like often lost in all the like bureaucratic tasks that people do to like bring joy to people. I don't think I have any more questions, but I don't know if there's anything that you just like want me to know or you think is like relevant or useful.
I think joy can be related to mental health. So the question can also be directed like, okay, how's the mental health situation in the country? What do you think are the human rights defenders' mental health status? And what about the activists that are around and in the country? Are activists supported by maybe the ruling political party or maybe the opposition? Because in some countries, the government actually supports the activists, including activists that oppose them. And in some countries, the opposition will make use of the activists to sort of like raise the issues and make the issue be more aware, whereby general public are more aware of the issues. So this kind of cases do not happen in Singapore. So maybe in other countries, they would have done it. Because if I have actually been to Korea, and in Korea, they actually set up this institution whereby they care about the mental health and mental wellness of activists, that especially because of the war. So they actually changed the government and they have to apologize. So thereafter, they built this institution whereby they start to counsel and care about the mental wellness, especially of activists who got interrogated by police. So there is no such thing in Singapore. And because of this, there are children who get interrogated by police in Singapore and they committed suicide. because Singapore's police interrogation is very terrifying. So children are generally very scared of it.
I'm not surprised. And do you feel that lack of support has it affected your mental health and the work that you do? Do you think that if Singapore had the same systems as Korea, you could have better mental health?
I think back then, yes. Because like mentioned, when I first came out, I was like the first female in Singapore. And then I was also the person, because of my result, I was supposed to be someone who boosts the GDP and not someone who wants to be a mother. So by having a dream that is different from what the government has taught us to be, then there were a lot of criticism. Like people would come to me and say, oh, but you're living the best life. You're like the top 10% in Singapore. You should be happy about it. But that didn't bring me any happiness. I don't look at my grade and say, okay, I score A1. I'm very happy today. I look at it and say, okay, now can I fulfill my dream of being a mother? Can I do what I want to do? Can I change another person's life? So I realized that if your dream is to change other people's life, then yeah, you need to just be focused on it.
And when you were feeling less happy, like, did you have any strategies that you had to bring yourself back to feeling happy and feeling motivated to do the work that you were doing?
I think it happened, which was around 2018, because in 2015 was the election, and in 2016 that was when we were all convicted. We were all found guilty for protesting at the only venue where Singaporeans can legally protest. Then in 2017, I was also deported from Malaysia. I was actually invited there to attend an event. And when I tried to enter it, they actually deported me back because they say that I will create unrest and I'm a national threat. Yeah. So I was like thinking, why am I a national threat? So that was in 2017. Then thereafter, there were a lot of police interrogation. I was even manhandled in Singapore Parliament. They had like 4 police officers to come and arrest me. Yeah, to literally like carry me. Yeah.
Insane.
So that is how overkill the Singapore government can be. Yeah. So after that, I was in a bad state, I think. Then in 2018, then I got invited to write the book, and I finally wrote down everything that has happened inside the book. Yeah. And it was also over there I realized, oh, so the NHS system is actually not what the Singapore government portrayed to be.
And what about today? Like, how are you feeling today? Because it's been 5 years, I guess, since 2018 now. No, 6 years since 2018. Do you think that feeling of like when you were asked to write the book and the positivity that came with it, is that stayed, or is it?
I think over there we have learned how to cope with it, and because the thing that if you are in Singapore, what you are being fed with is always the same thing that the government regurgitate. So whenever the government says that, oh, this is bad, that is bad, I really, and I'm like, no, this is just false. This is just blatant lies. I went through the whole system. I've went through both systems. So I know like, okay, this is just not true. And I've learned to ignore it. It's like, for example, someone comes to me and say, okay, your name today is not Hui Hui. I would just say, oh, okay, then what is my name? But it will not get into my head because I know my birth certificate is Hui Hui. I know that my IC and my identity card is Hui Hui. So it doesn't matter what other people say. I know what is the fact. So like the government can say, oh, we have the best healthcare system, NHS is bad. Complaining about healthcare system is just having something wrong with their mind. But we know this is just something that is false and it's blatant propaganda. Because I've been through the system, I know, no, this is not true. How long do I have to wait when I was in UK? And how long do I have to wait compared to I'm in Singapore? And how much money did I pay in both the situation in 2 countries? One as a local Singaporean and another as a foreigner. So I know who is telling the lies and who is the one who is not treating the citizens right.
Do you ever get frustrated when you know the truth, but other people just keep telling you that it's not the truth, or other people can't see that it's not the truth?
So before 2018, I would say that it gets me very frustrated. I'll be thinking like, okay, I have already said that I'm a Singaporean, and I already said that these are the things we went through and these are the things that are wrong. But people will say, oh no, this is not true, you know, in other countries, this is worse. But after I've been to other countries and I know it, I realize that first thing is that I am blessed to be able to travel out of Singapore to do this comparison. So instead of thinking that I'm frustrated, which is what I did before 2018, I've learned that, okay, this is a blessing because it kept me alive. It kept my future generation literally alive compared to if I were to be in Singapore. Like, one of the best example is that when I was in UK, they diagnose and check all my things very well. They will make sure like the baby is healthy. If there's any bleeding, is it a miscarriage or is it just basic spotting? But in Singapore, anything that happened, they'll just say go for abortion. Just go for abortion. It's like, how can KK Hospital, which is supposedly the best hospital in Singapore for women and children, keep on asking people to go for abortion when Singapore's birth rate is only 30,000? So and then I realized that this kind of thing not just happened to me, but a lot of mothers. So that was when I realized, this is the issue, and I'm blessed to be able to understand and experience another country's situation. I'm blessed to know the truth. Compared to people who do not know the truth until today and accept the government's propaganda, I realized that these are people who actually deserve my compassion because they never go through the system. They will probably be the people who keep working for the GDP, but they will never have their own house, never have their own families, and will not spend time with their children. Even if they were to have the next generation, they will probably be those who are like one of the majority whereby both husband and wife have to work. And they will never understand how other people in first world country, they can have long maternity leave, parental leave to take care of their newborns.
Okay. Yeah, it's shocking sometimes, and I know that the NHS is such an easy target because of the way that it functions. And I know that I'm biased because I have obviously just grown up with it.
But a lot of people are against NHS because they feel that it's not spending enough money. They are not there to abolish the system. So this is the main thing. It is a good system, so nobody is abolishing it. People just want it to be better, which is what we are supposed to do, to continue to be better. But in Singapore, people are not there to become better. People are just saying that, oh, you know, we just have to drag each other down. If one more person out there dies, I will have more money. But that's not true. Because in Singapore, we have this CPF system, the Central Provident Fund, which is one of the retirement scheme that was inherited down. And the thing is, it was supposed to be able to help Singaporeans, but now Singaporeans are just working till old age. This doesn't happen in other countries.
No, well, I think it's happening in the UK as well. The retirement age is just going up and up. I'm 25. I'm not anticipating retiring until I'm hitting at least 80, basically, which doesn't fill me with much happiness, to be honest, because I think you can definitely find happiness through work, but I don't think it should be the only source that you're finding happiness. There's other places to look, basically.
But you should be allowed the opportunities to work a variety of jobs. But in Singapore, it's like people are just forced to work. They are not working because of passion. Like the child abuse cases, there are a lot of child abuse cases because the teachers are working because that is the only thing that can give them like the $2,000, $3,000 salary. It's not because they really have a passion to take care of children. So they vent their angers and shout at children, which is very traumatizing to young kids. Yeah, it's basically psychological abuse to the children.
I think so. I have one final thing. One final question. Do you see hope and joy in the future?
I think I have learned to see hope and joy every single moment. And at the same time, not to let it overtake me. Because if you see no hope, that is why suicide rate increase. In fact, I think in Singapore, our suicide rate has increased more than 25%. It's not like almost 5,000 for a country as small as Singapore. So suicide rate is very high because people do not see hope in Singapore. Because our high cost of living, our divorce rate is on the high, children get abused, couples get separated. Yeah. So I've learned that, okay, if I am healthy right now, my children are healthy right now, then there is something for us to continue fighting and hope for, that our future generation will continue to become better. And meanwhile, let's take joy and finish up the food so we can move on for the next day and study hard for the next fight.
Okay, I like that view. It's a good, like, very practical, basically. Yeah.
And I think for example, in Singapore's case, is that mothers don't become activists. And in Singapore, because the main thing is that they are concerned, like, oh, if you are a mother, you become activist, your children will get like discriminated in school. So mothers are very scared. And there are also situations whereby people who are employed, they get threatened from their job, which is a very common thing in third world country. So this kind of thing do happen in Singapore, whereby people who speak up will then lose their job, or they simply apologize if they want to keep their job. There's this thing called like the POFMA, POFMA in Singapore. So it is the protection from online falsehood or something like that, whereby minister just go around Singapore and start sending people to say that, hey, you're telling something that's not the truth, you're saying a lie. But the reason why people are coming out with speculation is because there's no transparency and accountability in Singapore's government. So these are like a vicious cycle that's happening in Singapore.
That doesn't sound like a very... And yeah, you just need to find a way to break that cycle, to have a bit of hope.
So I have literally a future generation to look forward to. But I do know that there are many people who, they just give up, or they simply don't set up a family. Yeah, so these are generally the people who are in Singapore who are speaking up. They do not have a future generation to look up to. And this is also where the joy may be lost, where they focus more on their pride and ego. Then they let something else take over themselves. Yeah, which is why it's important to, you have your joy, enjoy for a moment, keep grounded. What is your next target? What policy do you want to talk about? And focus on it.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I have anything more to sort of ask, but I just want to say thank you again for like speaking, because it's wonderful to speak not only about like the topic, but also to be able to like learn about human rights in other places. Like I knew nothing of like what's happening, what like Singapore and its like politics and its culture, and it brought me a lot of joy basically. And I've got my notes that I'm going to use for the dissertation, and also my notes that I'm going to use just to look up my own things from the conversation, which has been great. Yeah. And yeah, thank you so much. I don't know, do you have anything else you want to say?
That's about it. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll send you an email, and if you like, I'll find out if I can like share the dissertation like with you when it's all finished and marked in a few months. And obviously,